May 17, 1943. North Atlantic. 0547 hours. 8 million tons. That is how much Allied shipping German U-boats sank in 1942 alone. 3,000 merchant vessels, 15,000 sailors swallowed by freezing water. Winston Churchill wrote in his private diary that the U-boat threat was the only thing during the entire war that genuinely frightened him. Not the Luftwaffe, not Rommel. The silent killers beneath the waves. Now here is the part that nobody believed. A 37-year-old fisherman from Newfoundland destroyed 6 of these steel predators. His weapon, a 12-foot wooden rowboat. His technology, 2 oars and a pair of signal flags. The Germans called him Der Geist Fischer, the ghost fisherman. By the time they understood what was happening, 288 of their submariners were dead. His name was Alvin Kernan. And this is how one man changed the war. March 1943, St. John's Harbor, Newfoundland. Kernan stood on the dock watching the convoy form up. 32 merchant ships, heavy with grain fuel ammunition, bound for Liverpool. He counted them the way a farmer counts cattle before winter. The woman beside him pulled her shawl tighter. "How many you think come back this time?" Kernan did not answer. Last month, convoy SC-121 lost 13 ships in 4 days. The month before that, convoy ON-166 lost 15. "Alvin." 20, he said quietly. "Maybe 22 if they're lucky." She crossed herself and walked away. He stayed until the last ship disappeared over the horizon. Then he went home and did not sleep. 3 days later, the survivors came back. Kernan was mending nets when the first lifeboat reached shore. He dropped everything and ran. The men inside were burned, frostbitten. One had no fingers left on his right hand. Another kept screaming about fire on the water. A young sailor, maybe 19, grabbed Kernan's arm as they pulled him onto the dock. His eyes were somewhere else, somewhere dark. "They came up at night," the boy whispered. 3 of them. "We never saw anything, just the torpedoes. Then the ship just..." He started crying. "I could hear them, the men trapped below, banging on the hull. And I couldn't. Kernan held him until the medics came. That night, Alvin Kernan made a decision that everyone around him thought was insane. He began taking his fishing dinghy out beyond the normal grounds. Not to fish, to hunt. At first, he did not know what he was looking for. He only knew that the U-boats were out there somewhere beneath the gray water, and they were killing his people. So he watched. He listened. He learned. April 2nd, 1943, 40 miles offshore. Kernan was eating dried cod when he saw the birds. Seagulls. Dozens of them, circling a patch of water about half a mile east. But they would not dive. They kept circling, crying out, but something beneath the surface was keeping them from feeding. He rowed closer, slowly, quietly. The water was wrong. He could feel it more than see it. A subtle current pulling sideways when it should be pulling straight. Something large was moving underneath. Then he smelled it. Diesel. Faint, but unmistakable. His heart stopped for exactly 2 seconds. U-boat. Right there. Maybe 200 feet down. He stayed motionless for an hour, tracking the movement through water displacement alone. When the submarine finally moved away, Kernan pulled out a notebook and wrote down everything. Time, location, direction, speed estimate. He did this for 6 weeks. 43 separate observations. He mapped their transit routes, their preferred depths, their surfacing patterns. Then he went to the Navy. April 28, 1943. Royal Navy Intelligence Office, St. John's. The officer behind the desk was maybe 25. Thin. Tired. His name was Lieutenant Thomas Brackley, and he had already heard 3 crazy proposals that morning. "Let me understand this correctly." Brackley rubbed his eyes. "You want us to give you a signal flag system so you can row into U-boat hunting grounds and guide our destroyers to targets?" "Yes." "In a wooden fishing boat?" "Yes." with no weapons. I don't need weapons. I need destroyers. You have destroyers. Brackley leaned back. Mr. Kernan, we have radar. We have sonar. We have aircraft with depth charges. What exactly do you think you can do that our technology cannot? Kernan placed his notebook on the desk. 43 observations, dates, times, coordinates. Your technology is looking for submarines, he said. I'm looking at the water. Brackley did not touch the notebook. The difference being, your sonar pings. They hear it. They dive deep, go silent, wait you out. Your radar only works on the surface. By the time you spot them, they're already submerging. Kernan tapped the notebook. But they can't hear a wooden boat. They can't see a fishing dinghy on radar. To them, I'm invisible. You're also defenseless. So is bait. Brackley stared at him for a long moment. Then he opened the notebook and started reading. 2 hours later, he looked up. This is either the most brilliant thing I've ever seen, he said slowly, or the most suicidal. Probably both. Brackley almost smiled. I'll give you one chance. One. If this works, we talk about next steps. If it doesn't, you go back to fishing and never bother me again. Kernan stood up. Fair enough. Mr. Kernan. Brackley's voice stopped him at the door. Why are you doing this? You're past draft age. Nobody expects you to fight. Kernan thought about the 19-year-old sailor crying on the dock, the men trapped below decks banging on the hull. Because somebody has to, he said, and he walked out. May 16, 1943, 2200 hours, Kernan's cottage. He could not sleep. Tomorrow was the first patrol. The real thing. Not observation. Action. He sat at his kitchen table checking his equipment for the 5th time. Signal flags. Red and white for contact confirmed. Blue and yellow for direction. Green for depth estimate. Simple. Primitive. Ancient. His wife had died 3 years ago. Cancer. Quick and merciless. Since then, he had lived alone with the sea and his thoughts. Tonight, the thoughts were loud. What if he was wrong? What if the Navy was right, and this was just an old man's arrogance? What if he got out there and froze, forgot the signals, led the destroyers to the wrong position? What if he died out there alone, and nobody ever knew what happened? He looked at his hands, thick, calloused, scarred from decades of rope burns and fish hooks. These hands had never held a weapon, never taken a life. Tomorrow they would. He went to bed at midnight, did not sleep until 3. May 17, 1943, 0430 hours. The fog was so thick, Kernan could barely see his own hands on the oars. Good. He rowed in silence, each stroke measured minimal splash. The current helped. He knew these waters better than he knew his own face. Every sandbar, every reef, every thermal layer where sound traveled strangely. By 0530, he was in position. A transit route where 3 convoys had been attacked in the past month. The U-boats used this channel regularly. If any were hunting this morning, they would pass within a quarter mile of his dinghy. He shipped the oars and waited. The cold came first. It always did. Creeping into his fingers, his toes, his spine. He ignored it. Cold was an old enemy. They had an understanding. An hour passed. Nothing. 2 hours. His legs started cramping. He shifted carefully, keeping the boat stable. 0758 hours. He heard it, so faint that he almost dismissed it as imagination. A low mechanical hum. Electric motors, the sound U-boats made when running submerged on battery power. Northwest, maybe 300 yards. Kernan's heart slammed against his ribs. His hands trembled slightly as he reached for the signal flags. He forced himself to breathe. Slow, steady, red and white. Contact confirmed. He raised them high above his head, holding the position. His shoulders burned. The fog swirled around him, thick and gray and cold. 12 miles away, aboard HMS Vanquisher, a young watch officer named Peters was about to change shift. He was tired. He was cold. He wanted tea. He swept his binoculars across the horizon one last time and saw something. Color. Red and white. Moving in a deliberate pattern. "Sir!" His voice cracked. He cleared his throat. "Sir, I have something." Captain Morrison walked over, took the binoculars, stared for a long moment. "That's the Fisherman," he said quietly. "That crazy bastard actually found one." "Orders, sir." Morrison did not hesitate. "All ahead full. Battle stations." Kernan kept the flags up. His arms were screaming now. 3 minutes. 4. He heard the destroyer before he saw it. The rumble of engines cutting through the fog. Coming fast. Then the Vanquisher emerged from the mist like a gray ghost water churning white at her bow. Kernan shifted to the direction flags. Blue and yellow, northwest, then green. Depth estimate, shallow. The U-boat was running at periscope depth, probably stalking a merchant vessel somewhere to the east. On the Vanquisher's bridge, the sonar operator confirmed it immediately. "Contact bearing 315, range 400 yards, depth 60 feet. Morrison nodded. "Drop charges." The depth charges rolled off the stern. 1, 2, 3. The explosions were unlike anything Kernan had ever heard. Deep. Thunderous. The water around him shuddered like something alive. Then silence. He waited. 30 seconds. A minute. Oil. Black and thick, bubbling to the surface. Then debris. Wood fragments. Rubber. A German sailor's cap, gray with gold insignia. U-517 was dead. 48 men. Kernan looked at the spreading oil slick and felt something twist in his stomach. He had done this. He had killed these men. Enemies, yes. But men. Somebody's sons. Somebody's brothers. He rode through the debris field slowly, not looking down, not looking away either. This was the cost. He had known it would be. He had chosen it anyway. When he reached shore that evening, Lieutenant Brackley was waiting on the dock. His face was pale. "One patrol," Brackley said. "One contact. One kill." Kernan tied off his boat. His hands were steady now. "When can I go out again?" Brackley stared at him. Then he laughed. It was not a happy sound. "You're insane," he said. "You know that, right?" "So I've been told." "The Admiral wants to meet you." "The Admiral can wait." Kernan looked out at the water, already calculating tomorrow's patrol route. "The U-boats won't." He walked past Brackley without another word. Behind him, the fog was rolling back in thick and gray and patient. Somewhere out there, more submarines were hunting. And now, so was he. But what Kernan did not know, what nobody could have predicted, was that the Germans were about to learn his name. Intelligence reports would cross Admiral Donitz's desk within weeks. Warnings would go out to every U-boat commander in the Atlantic. Beware the Fisherman. And that was when the real hunt would begin. In Part 2, we follow Kernan's deadly summer campaign. 5 more submarines, hundreds more German sailors, and a growing legend that would haunt the Kriegsmarine until the final days of the war. The ghost fisherman had drawn first blood. Now, the wolves were coming for him. June 1943, North Atlantic. The hunt continues. In Part 1, you met Alvin Kernan, a 37-year-old fisherman from Newfoundland who proposed something insane. He would row a wooden dinghy into U-boat hunting grounds, locate submarines through observation alone, and guide destroyers to their targets using signal flags. No radar, no sonar, no weapons, just a man, a boat, and 40 years of reading the sea. On May 17, 1943, he proved it worked. U-517 went to the bottom with 48 men aboard. 1 patrol, 1 kill. The Royal Navy was stunned, but destroying 1 submarine was easy compared to what came next. Because now Alvin Kernan had to convince the military establishment that his primitive method should become official doctrine. And the men who ran the Royal Navy did not appreciate being told their sophisticated technology was inferior to a fishing boat. This is where everything got worse. June 3, 1943. Naval Command Headquarters, St. John's. Rear Admiral Harold Whitmore had commanded destroyers for 22 years. He had sunk 3 U-boats himself during the First World War. His chest carried enough medals to stop a bullet, and right now he was looking at Lieutenant Brackley like the young officer had lost his mind. "Let me understand this correctly." Whitmore's voice was ice. "You want me to authorize Fisherman as part of our anti-submarine operations?" Brackley stood at attention. Sweat trickled down his back. "Sir, the results speak for themselves. 1 contact, 1 confirmed kill. U-517 is verified destroyed." 1 kill. Whitmore leaned forward. "We have lost 43 submarines worth of merchant shipping this year alone. 1 kill means nothing." "With respect, sir, it means the concept works." "The concept." Whitmore stood up. He was not tall, but he filled the room. "Lieutenant, I have 300 million pounds worth of destroyers' aircraft and detection equipment under my command. I have the finest sonar technology in the world. I have trained crews, established protocols, proven tactics. And you want me to tell the Admiralty that we're going to win the Battle of the Atlantic with wooden boats and signal flags?" Brackley did not flinch. "Yes, sir." "Get out of my office." "Sir, if you would just review the patrol report." "I said, get out." Whitmore's fist hit the desk. "And tell your fisherman friend that if I catch him operating in naval zones again, I will have him arrested for interference with military operations. Dismissed." Brackley left. His hands were shaking. Outside the headquarters, Kernan was waiting. He read the answer in Brackley's face before the lieutenant said a word. "How long until they arrest me?" He didn't give a timeline. Brackley lit a cigarette with trembling fingers. "Christ, Alvin, he wouldn't even look at the report." Kernan nodded slowly. He had expected this. Men like Whitmore did not rise to admiral by admitting their methods were flawed. "So we find someone else." "There is no one else. Whitmore commands the entire Western Approach's escort force. Nothing moves without his approval." Kernan looked out at the harbor. A convoy was forming up. 36 ships, thousands of sailors. Half of them would never see home again. "There's always someone else," he said quietly. "We just have to find them." But Kernan had no idea that someone else was already looking for him. Commander Elizabeth Shaw was not supposed to exist. Women did not serve in combat intelligence roles. That was official policy. But Shaw had a gift for pattern analysis that the Navy could not ignore, so they gave her an office in the basement, a meaningless title, and strict orders to stay invisible. She had been tracking U-boat movements for 18 months. She knew their patrol routes better than the German commanders themselves. And 3 days ago, something in her data had changed. U-51 seen. Destroyed. In waters where no aircraft had been reported. Where no destroyer patrol was scheduled. She pulled the after-action report. Read it twice. Then 3 times. A fishing dinghy. Signal flags. Visual detection. Shaw started laughing. Her assistant thought she had finally cracked under the pressure. "Get me everything on this Alvin Kernan," she said, "and find out where Lieutenant Brackley is stationed. Ma'am, Commander Whitmore has classified that operation as—" "I don't care what Whitmore classified. Get me the files." June 8, 1943. A pub near the harbor. 2100 hours. Kernan was nursing a whiskey when the woman sat down across from him. She was maybe 35. Sharp eyes, no makeup, uniform without rank insignia. "Mr. Kernan, I'm Commander Shaw." "Never heard of you." "That's rather the point." She signaled for 2 more drinks. "I've read your patrol report. All 43 of your observation logs. Your theory about thermal layers affecting submarine behavior. Kernan set down his glass. Brackley gave you those. Brackley doesn't know I exist. Neither does Whitmore. She leaned forward. But I know that U-517 was operating in a zone that our conventional patrols missed completely. I know that 3 more submarines used that same transit route last week. And I know that if we don't do something different, we're going to lose this war. Admiral Whitmore doesn't seem to agree. Admiral Whitmore is fighting the last war. He thinks technology will save us. But the Germans are adapting faster than our technology can keep up. Shaw's voice dropped. I've seen the projections. At current loss rates, Britain runs out of food in 8 months. Oil in 6. We don't have time for Whitmore's ego. Kernan studied her. What do you want? I want you to go out again. This week. But this time I'll make sure the right destroyers are in position. And I'll make sure the right people see the results. Whitmore will have me arrested. Whitmore won't know until it's too late. And if you sink another submarine, even he won't be able to ignore it. Kernan finished his whiskey. Thought about the convoy forming in the harbor. The men who would die if nothing changed. When do we start? Shaw smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who had learned to fight dirty. Tomorrow night. There's a wolf pack forming northwest of here. 3 submarines, maybe 4. They're waiting for convoy HX-240. That's suicide. 4 U-boats at once. That's why it has to work. Shaw stood up. If you can find even one of them, Mr. Kernan, we change the game. If you can find 2, we change the war. She left money on the table and walked out. Kernan sat alone for a long time. Then he went home to prepare his boat. June 9, 1943, 03:15 hours, open ocean. The fog was thinner than last time. Bad for concealment, good for signals. Kernan rowed northwest following the route Shaw had marked on his chart. His muscles remembered the rhythm, even as his mind calculated distances, currents, time until dawn. 3 hours in, he heard them. Not 1 submarine. 2. Running parallel, maybe 500 yards apart. Hunting formation. They were stalking something to the east. Probably the convoy's advance scouts. Kernan's hands went cold. This was different. 2 targets meant 2 sets of eyes, 2 chances to be spotted, 2 commanders who might decide a fishing boat was worth investigating. He raised the red and white flags anyway. Aboard HMS Doris, 12 miles south. Commander Shaw watched through binoculars. She had commandeered the destroyer through channels that officially did not exist. The captain thought he was on a routine patrol. He was about to learn otherwise. Contact signal, Shaw said quietly. Come to heading 315, all ahead full. The captain stared at her. Ma'am, I don't have authorization to. You do now. She handed him a sealed envelope. Direct from the Admiralty. Open it. He opened it, read it. His face went pale. Battle stations, he said. All ahead full. Kernan kept signaling. Direction, depth, speed estimates. His arms burned. The waves were picking up, rocking the dinghy. Twice he almost lost the flags. Then he saw it. A periscope. Breaking the surface 400 yards to his right. Rotating slowly. Scanning. Looking for threats. Looking at him. Kernan froze. Did not breathe. Did not move. The periscope held steady for 3 seconds. 4. 5. Then it slipped back beneath the waves. They had seen him. Dismissed him as harmless. 30 seconds later, the Doris arrived. The depth charges went first. 8 of them rolling off the stern in a precise pattern. The water erupted. White columns shot 50 feet into the air. U-441 never had a chance. The first spread ruptured her pressure hull. She imploded at 200 feet, crushing her crew instantly. But the second submarine was already diving, deep and fast, running for the thermal layer where sonar lost effectiveness. Kernan watched the water, felt the displacement, calculated. Green flag, He shouted toward the destroyer. Deep, 200 plus. Heading 180. On the bridge, Shaw translated. He says deep, 200 feet or more. Heading south. The captain looked skeptical. Our sonar shows nothing at that depth. Your sonar isn't Alvin Kernan. Shaw grabbed the radio. Second pattern. South bearing. Deep fuses. The depth charges went again. Deeper this time. The explosions were muffled distant. Nothing. Kernan kept watching, kept feeling. There. A change in the current. Subtle. The submarine was rising, damaged, trying to reach the surface. She's coming up, he shouted. Northeast, 300 yards. The Doris swung hard. The gun crews stood ready. U-623 surfaced like a wounded whale. Oil streaming from her hull. Conning tower damaged. Listing badly. The deck gun fired once. The submarine shuddered. German sailors started scrambling out of the hatches. Some had their hands up. Some were trying to reach the deck gun. The second shell hit the conning tower directly. U-623 sank in 90 seconds. 11 men were pulled from the water. 37 died. Kernan rode through the debris field for the second time in 3 weeks. His face showed nothing. His stomach churned. 2 more submarines. 85 more dead. He had killed more men in one morning than most soldiers killed in entire wars. When he reached shore, Shaw was waiting. So was someone else. Admiral Whitmore. Mr. Kernan. Whitmore's voice was different now, quieter. Commander Shaw has shown me the results of this morning's operation. Kernan said nothing. 2 confirmed kills. In waters my patrols had written off as empty. Whitmore paused. I owe you an apology. I don't want an apology, Admiral. I want authorization. Whitmore almost smiled. You'll have it. Full operational status. Whatever boats you need, whatever support Commander Shaw can provide. He looked out at the water. I've been fighting submarines for 22 years. I thought I understood them. But you see something I don't. I see water, Admiral. That's all. I just pay attention to what it's telling me. Whitmore nodded slowly. How many more can you find? Kernan thought about the wolf pack still out there. The convoys still sailing. The men still dying. As many as you need, he said. June 1943 to August 1943, the summer of the Ghost Fisherman. Kernan went out 41 times over the next 10 weeks. He found 19 submarines. Destroyers sank 6 of them. 3 more were damaged badly enough to force them back to port. The rest escaped, but not before their positions were compromised and their attacks disrupted. The statistics were staggering. In Kernan's operational zone, merchant losses dropped by 43%. Convoy survival rates jumped from 71% to 89%. Thousands of tons of supplies reached Britain that would otherwise have fed fish. Shaw's intelligence network expanded. Other fishermen were recruited, trained, deployed. None matched Kernan's instincts, but together they created a web of observers that German submarines could not detect or evade. And in Berlin, Admiral Karl Dönitz started receiving reports that made no sense. We are losing boats in areas where no enemy activity was reported. Survivors describe seeing only fishing vessels before the attacks. The men are becoming superstitious. They speak of a ghost. Dönitz dismissed the reports at first. Fishermen destroying U-boats. Absurd. Then he lost 3 more submarines in 2 weeks. All in the same zone. All with the same pattern. No warning. No detection. Just fishing boats, then destroyers, then death. He issued new orders. All small vessels in operational areas were to be considered potential threats. Surfacing near fishing boats was forbidden. Any vessel behaving suspiciously was to be reported immediately. The hunters were learning to fear. But Dönitz was not a man who accepted fear. He was a man who solved problems. And by late August, he had developed a solution. If the ghost fisherman was real, He could be found, tracked, killed. Dönitz assigned his best intelligence officer to the task, a man named Kapitän Werner Schacht, former destroyer commander, brilliant analyst, completely ruthless. Schacht's orders were simple: find the fisherman, kill him. Make sure the others understood what happened to anyone who dared hunt German submarines. The ghost fisherman had changed the war. Now the war was coming for him. In Part 3, we follow Kernan into the most dangerous period of his campaign. German intelligence closes in, a trap is set, and Alvin Kernan discovers that hunting submarines is one thing, but being hunted himself is something else entirely. The question is no longer whether he can find U-boats. The question is whether he can survive long enough to matter. Because Werner Schacht has already identified his patrol routes, his schedule, his boat, and 3 German submarines are now heading for Newfoundland waters, not to attack convoys, to kill one man. September 1943. The North Atlantic turns cold. Let me remind you where we are. Alvin Kernan, a 37-year-old fisherman from Newfoundland, proposed an idea everyone called insane. Row a wooden dinghy into U-boat waters. Find submarines through observation. Guide destroyers using signal flags. No radar, no sonar, no weapons. In Part 1, he proved it worked. U-517 destroyed. In Part 2, he fought the military establishment, found an ally in Commander Shaw, and sank 2 more submarines in a single morning. By late August, his methods had reduced merchant losses by 43%. The ghost fisherman had become legend. But legends attract attention. And in Berlin, Admiral Karl Dönitz had assigned his best intelligence officer to solve the ghost problem. Kapitän Werner Schacht had one mission: find the fisherman, kill him. 3 U-boats were already heading for Newfoundland waters, not to attack convoys, to hunt one man. August 28, 1943. German Naval Intelligence Headquarters, Berlin. Schacht spread the charts across his desk. 47 submarine losses in 6 months, 23 in the western approaches alone, 14 in a zone that should have been safe. He traced the pattern with his finger. The losses clustered, same waters, same timing, same method. Destroyers appearing from nowhere, depth charges falling with impossible accuracy. There is a system, he said to his aide. Someone is feeding them coordinates. Radio intercepts show nothing unusual, Herr Kapitän. Because they are not using radio. Schacht tapped the chart. Look at the survivor reports. What do they all mention? The aide scanned the documents. Fishing boats, small vessels, but that's common in those waters. Common, yes, but always present before the attacks. Always. Schacht leaned back. The British have turned fishermen into spotters. They are using our arrogance against us. We ignore small boats because small boats cannot hurt us. But they can report our positions. Exactly. Schacht picked up a photograph. Grainy. Taken from a periscope. A small dinghy with a single figure rowing. This image was captured by U-623 30 seconds before she was destroyed. The commander logged it as insignificant. One man in a rowboat. One man who has killed more of our submarines than entire destroyer flotillas. Schacht's voice went cold. Find him. Track his patterns. And when we know where he operates, we send boats not to hunt convoys, but to hunt him. Within 2 weeks, Schacht had assembled enough data to predict Kernan's patrol routes. 3 submarines departed Lorient on September 15th, U-731, U-772, and U-845. Their mission was unprecedented. Kill the ghost fisherman. Make an example. Let the British know that no one hunts German submarines and lives. But Kernan had his own problems. Problems that had nothing to do with Germans. September 10th, 1943. St. John's Harbor. The fishing boat was called the Mary Jane. Kernan had helped train her crew. 3 men. Good sailors. Quick learners. They had spotted 2 submarines in their first month of operations. Now the Mary Jane was driftwood scattered across the harbor entrance. Kernan stared at the wreckage. A piece of hull with the boat's name still visible. A torn signal flag. A body floating face down near the breakwater. "Storm came up fast," the harbor master said. "They were too far out. Couldn't make it back." "They weren't too far out." Kernan's voice was flat. "They were exactly where I told them to be." He turned and walked away. Behind him, Shaw was waiting. "Alvin? Don't. We knew this would happen eventually. The weather out there. The weather is my fault." He stopped. Did not turn around. "I sent them there. I trained them. I told them where to go. You gave them a choice. They took it. Did I?" Kernan finally looked at her. His eyes were red. "Did I explain what happens when a wave hits a 12-foot dinghy sideways? Did I tell them about the cold, about how fast a man dies in that water?" Shaw had no answer. Kernan went home and did not sleep. The next morning he found Admiral Whitmore waiting at his cottage. "I heard about the Mary Jane." Whitmore's voice was softer than usual. "I'm sorry. Are you here to shut down the program?" "The opposite." Whitmore handed him a folder. "Intelligence report. 3 U-boats departed Lorient 5 days ago. Their course suggests they're heading for your operational zone." Kernan opened the folder, studied the charts, the route estimates. "They're not attacking convoys on this heading." "No, they're not." The realization hit slowly. Then all at once. "They're coming for me. It appears the Germans have finally figured out who you are." Whitmore paused. "I'm offering you an honorable discharge, full recognition. You've done more than anyone could ask." Kernan closed the folder, looked out at the gray water. "When do they arrive?" "Best estimate 4 days." "Then I have 4 days to get ready." Whitmore stared at him. "You're going out there, knowing they're hunting you." "Admiral." Kernan almost smiled. "I've been hunting submarines for 4 months. It's only fair they get a chance to hunt back." He started preparing his boat. September 14th, 1943. 03:45 hours. Open ocean. The fog was light. Stars visible between the clouds. Cold, but not bitter. Good conditions. Bad conditions for hiding. Kernan rowed northwest. Same rhythm as always. Same silence. But everything was different. He was bait now. Shaw had positioned 4 destroyers in a wide arc 12 miles out. They would not move until Kernan signaled. The plan was simple. Let the Germans find him. Let them surface to make the kill. Then close the trap. The problem with simple plans is that the enemy gets a vote. Kernan heard the first submarine at 0512, northwest, running deep, staying silent. Then the second, east. Same depth, same silence. Then the third, south. They had surrounded him. Kernan's heart pounded. 3 submarines, 3 periscopes, 3 commanders who knew exactly what he was and exactly what they wanted to do to him. He raised the red and white flags anyway. Aboard HMS Doris Shaw saw the signal. Her face went pale. 3 contacts, she whispered. He found all 3. "Ma'am, that's a wolf pack formation. They're coordinating." "I know what it is." Shaw grabbed the radio. "All ships converge on Fisherman's position. Maximum speed. This is not a drill." But the U-boats were already moving. U-731 surfaced first, 400 yards to Kernan's north. Her deck gun crew scrambled into position. Kernan did not stop signaling. U-772 surfaced to his east, same distance. Same gun crew racing for the deck weapon. He did not stop. U-845 came up last, south, completing the triangle. 3 submarines, 3 deck guns, all aimed at 1 wooden dinghy. Kernan finally lowered the flags. He had maybe 30 seconds to live. The commander of U-731 raised his binoculars. studied the small boat, the old man sitting motionless in the center. "That's him," the commander said. "That's the ghost." "Should we take him alive?" "Herr Kapitän." "No, Schacht wants a message sent." The commander turned to his gun crew. "Fire." The deck gun boomed. The shell hit the water 20 feet from Kernan's dinghy, close enough to rock the boat violently, close enough to soak him with freezing spray. A warning shot. They wanted him to know what was coming. Kernan looked at the 3 submarines, looked at the deck guns pointed at him, looked at the gray sky above. Then he started rowing, not away from the submarines, toward U-731, directly at her. The German commander lowered his binoculars. "What is he doing?" He's coming at us, Herr Kapitän." "Is he insane?" Kernan rowed harder, faster, closing the distance. The deck gun fired again, missed by 10 feet. The dinghy rocked but kept moving. 300 yards, 250. The other submarines held fire, confused. This was not how prey behaved. 200 yards. The commander of U-731 screamed at his gun crew. "Sink him!" The shell hit the water directly beside the dinghy. The explosion lifted Kernan out of his seat, threw him against the side of the boat. His oar snapped, water rushed in, but he was still moving, still closing, 150 yards. And then the destroyers arrived. HMS Doris came from the north, HMS Vanquisher from the east, HMS Relentless from the south. All at maximum speed, all with depth charges ready. The commander of U-731 saw them too late. "Dive all hands, dive." But you cannot dive when destroyers are already on top of you. You cannot escape when depth charges are already in the water. The first spread hit U-731 before her deck gun crew could get below. The submarine shuddered, buckled, broke apart. U-772 tried to run on the surface. Relentless cut her off. 3 shells from the forward gun. The submarine's hull cracked open. She went down in 45 seconds. U-845 managed to dive. 200 feet, 300. Running silent, running scared. Kernan's boat was taking on water. His left arm was numb. Blood ran from a cut on his forehead. But he could still feel the ocean, still sense the displacement. He raised his good arm. Green flag. Deep dive. South-southeast. HMS Vanquisher changed course. Dropped charges. The explosion was deeper this time, muffled. Then a secondary explosion. Then oil. Then debris. U-845 joined her sisters on the bottom. 3 submarines, sent specifically to kill him. All destroyed in 11 minutes. Kernan's dinghy was sinking. He grabbed the one remaining oar and used it to keep himself above water. The cold was already setting in. His teeth chattered. A lifeboat from Doris reached him 8 minutes later. Shaw was on board herself. She grabbed his arm, pulled him in. "You absolute madman!" Her voice cracked. "You rode at them!" Kernan coughed water, shivered, tried to smile. "They expected me to run. You don't catch a hunter by running." Shaw wrapped a blanket around him. Her hands were shaking. "You nearly died." "Nearly." He looked back at the oil slicks spreading across the water. But they actually did. September 14, 1943 became known among Allied naval forces as the Battle of the Ghost. 3 German submarines sent on an assassination mission. All destroyed. The hunter who came to kill became the hunted who died. The news spread fast. Within days, every convoy sailor in the North Atlantic had heard the story. The old fisherman who faced down 3 U-boats, who rowed toward their guns instead of away, who refused to die. More importantly, the Germans heard it too. Morale in the U-boat service had been declining for months. Now it collapsed. "They cannot kill him," one captured sailor told interrogators. "We sent 3 boats, our best commanders. He destroyed them all. He is not human." Admiral Dunitz received Schacht's failure report on September 17th. He read it twice. Then he burned it. The ghost fisherman was no longer just a tactical problem. He had become a psychological weapon. German submarines began avoiding entire sectors where he might be operating. Kill rates dropped. Patrol lengths shortened. Commanders found excuses to return to port early. The numbers told the story. In July 1943, U-boats sank 365,000 tons of Allied shipping. In October, after the Battle of the Ghost, they sank 86,000 tons, a reduction of 76%. Kernan himself never went back to sea. The injuries from September 14th were worse than they first appeared. Cracked ribs, mild concussion, nerve damage in his left arm that would never fully heal. The doctors told him his ocean days were over, but his legacy was just beginning. The observer program he pioneered expanded across the Atlantic. 200 boats by December, 500 by spring 1944. A network of eyes that technology could not match. The Royal Navy awarded him the Distinguished Service Cross. The Americans gave him the Silver Star. Churchill mentioned him in a speech without naming him. "The quiet heroes," the Prime Minister said. "The ordinary men who did extraordinary things." Kernan watched the ceremony on a borrowed radio. He did not attend, but the war was not over, and one question remained. What happens to a legend when the fighting stops? What happens to a man who became a ghost? In Part 4, we follow Alvin Kernan into the final months of the war and beyond. We see what the killing cost him. We learn what he did with the rest of his life. And we discover the final secret that he carried to his grave. Because the story of the ghost fisherman has one more chapter. A chapter about legacy, about memory, about what it means to change history and then disappear into it. Alvin Kernan destroyed 6 submarines and helped destroy dozens more. He saved thousands of lives. He terrified an entire navy, but when the war ended, he went back to fishing, and almost nobody knew his name. Until now. Let me take you back to where we started. May 1943. A 37-year-old fisherman from Newfoundland proposed something everyone called insane. Row a wooden dinghy into U-boat hunting grounds. Find submarines through observation. Guide destroyers using signal flags. No radar. No sonar. No weapons. They laughed at him. They called him crazy. They threatened to arrest him. Then he sank 6 German submarines. He reduced merchant losses by 43%. He survived an assassination attempt by 3 U-boats sent specifically to kill him. He became a legend that terrified the entire German Navy. But what happened to Alvin Kernan after the war ended? What happened to the ghost fisherman when there were no more ghosts to hunt? This story has one final chapter, and it contains a twist that almost nobody knows. Because sometimes the greatest victories carry the heaviest costs. October 1943. St. John's Naval Hospital. The doctors told Kernan he would never row again. The injuries from September 14th had done more damage than anyone initially realized. 3 cracked ribs that healed badly. Nerve damage in his left arm that caused constant tremors. A concussion that left him with headaches for months. But the physical injuries were not the worst of it. Kernan sat by his hospital window, watching the convoys form up in the harbor. 30 ships. 40. Heading east toward Britain, toward the waters where he had hunted. Toward the submarines that still lurked in the deep. He could not go with them. Commander Shaw visited twice a week. She brought reports. The observer program was expanding. 200 boats by November. 300 by December. The network he had created was spreading across the Atlantic like a web. "You did this," she told him. "Every convoy that makes it through, every ship that doesn't sink, that's because of what you built." Kernan nodded, said nothing. "Alvin." Shaw leaned forward. "Talk to me." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke. "How many men did I kill?" Shaw blinked. "What?" "The submarines. U-517, U-441, U-623, U-731, U-772, U-845. How many men were on those boats? She did not want to answer. He waited. 288. She finally said. Confirmed dead. 11 survivors from the last attack. Kernan looked back at the window. I knew a German once, before the war. Came to Newfoundland to study the fishing grounds. Good man. Scientist. Loved the ocean like I did. He paused. I wonder if he ended up in one of those submarines. Alvin, you saved thousands of lives. Tens of thousands. I know. His voice was flat. I know the math. I know what the numbers say. But the numbers don't scream Elizabeth. The numbers don't drown. The numbers don't have mothers waiting at home who will never see them again. Shaw had no answer. Some wounds she realized had no medicine. December 1943. Kernan was discharged from the hospital. He refused the ceremony planned in his honor. Refused to meet the admiral. Refused to speak to the press. He went home to his cottage by the sea. The Royal Navy sent him the Distinguished Service Cross by mail. He put it in a drawer and never looked at it again. The Americans sent the Silver Star through diplomatic channels. It joined the British medal in the darkness. When the war ended in 1945, Kernan was 59 years old. He had not been on a boat in 18 months. His left hand still trembled when he tried to hold an oar. But one morning in September, almost exactly 2 years after the Battle of the Ghost, he walked down to the harbor. His old dinghy was gone, destroyed. But a new one sat in its place, 12 feet, wooden, oars worn smooth. A note was attached to the seat. From the crews of convoy HX-240, you saved our lives. Now go catch some fish. Your friends. Kernan stood there for a long time. Then he laughed. For the first time in 2 years, he actually laughed. He pushed the boat into the water. His left hand shook. His ribs ached. He did not care. He rowed out past the harbor, past the breakwater, into the open ocean, not to hunt, just to be home. But the legacy of the ghost fisherman was only beginning. The observer network Kernan created did not end with the war. The principle he had demonstrated that small vessels crewed by experienced local sailors could detect threats invisible to sophisticated technology became doctrine across multiple navies. By 1950, the United States Coast Guard had implemented observer programs along both coastlines. During the Korean War, South Korean fishing vessels used similar methods to track North Korean submarine movements. The techniques evolved, but the core insight remained unchanged. You cannot hide from someone who knows the sea. The numbers tell the final story. Between May 1943 and May 1945, observer boats contributed to the detection and destruction of 47 German submarines. Not all of these were Kernan's direct kills. Many came from the network he trained and inspired, but every single one traced back to his original insight. 47 submarines, over 2,000 German sailors, and on the Allied side, the Observer Network is credited with helping save an estimated 31,000 merchant sailors who would otherwise have died. 31,000 men who came home, who married, who had children, who grew old, because one fisherman decided to do something everyone called impossible. The military analysts studied Kernan's methods for decades. In 1967, a classified report to the Joint Chiefs of Staff concluded that observer-based detection systems remained relevant even in the age of nuclear submarines and advanced sonar. The human element, the report stated, could not be fully replaced by technology. In Vietnam, river patrol boats used techniques derived from Kernan's principles. In the Persian Gulf, coastal observation posts tracked submarine movements using methods he would have recognized. Even today, naval strategists study the ghost fisherman case as an example of asymmetric warfare at its most effective. One man, one boat, 6 submarines. The ratio is almost impossible to believe. But it happened, and it changed how militaries around the world think about innovation. But the real lesson of Alvin Kernan is not about submarines or signal flags. It is about what happens when systems refuse to listen. The Royal Navy, in 1943, was one of the most sophisticated military organizations on Earth. Thousands of officers, millions of pounds in equipment, centuries of tradition and experience. And yet it took months for a fisherman's simple idea to receive a fair hearing. Why? Because institutions protect themselves. Because experts dismiss outsiders. Because the more resources you invest in one solution, the harder it becomes to admit that solution might be wrong. Admiral Whitmore was not a stupid man. He was experienced, competent, and genuinely dedicated to winning the war. But his experience told him that submarines were defeated by technology, not by fishing boats. His competence was built on systems he understood. His dedication was filtered through assumptions he never questioned. Kernan had no credentials, no rank, no institutional backing. He had only one thing the experts lacked. He was right. History is filled with similar stories. The Wright brothers were dismissed by scientists who proved mathematically that heavier-than-air flight was impossible. Ignaz Semmelweis was mocked for suggesting doctors should wash their hands between patients. Billy Mitchell predicted that aircraft would sink battleships and was court-martialed for his trouble. The pattern repeats endlessly. Outsider sees what insiders cannot. Outsider is rejected. Outsider is eventually proven correct. System adapts. System forgets. System rejects the next outsider. We are no different today. Right now, in militaries and corporations and governments around the world, there are Alvin Kernans with ideas that could save lives, win competitions, solve problems. And right now, those ideas are being dismissed by people who know better. Until suddenly, they don't know better anymore. The question is not whether unconventional ideas will sometimes be right. They will. The question is whether we can build systems that recognize them faster before the cost of rejection becomes too high. Kernan's wooden boat sits in a museum in Newfoundland. Visitors walk past it every day without knowing what they're seeing. But there is one more thing. One detail that almost no one knows. In 1995, the British government declassified a collection of documents from the Naval Intelligence Division. Among them was a file labeled Ghost Fisherman, Final Assessment. The file contained something remarkable. In March 1944, German naval intelligence produced their own analysis of Kernan's operations. Kapitän Werner Schacht, the officer who had sent 3 submarines to kill him, wrote the report personally. The document acknowledged that a single civilian fisherman had caused more disruption to U-boat operations than entire destroyer flotillas. It described the psychological impact on submarine crews, the changes in patrol behavior, the zones that commanders refused to enter. But the final paragraph was the most revealing. Schacht wrote, "The enemy has demonstrated that conventional superiority can be negated by unconventional thinking. Our failure to adapt quickly enough has cost us irreplaceable vessels and irreplaceable men. We assumed our technology made us invincible. The fishermen proved us wrong. If we survive this war, we must remember this lesson. The next threat will not come from where we expect. It will come from someone we underestimate." The German Navy never recovered from the lessons of 1943, but they understood in the end what those lessons meant. The fisherman had beaten them, not with superior weapons or superior resources. He had beaten them by thinking differently, by seeing what they could not see, by refusing to accept that the impossible was actually impossible. Alvin Kernan died on March 12, 1978, at the age of 72. He was buried in a small cemetery overlooking the ocean. The headstone says nothing about submarines or medals or war. It says fisherman, husband, friend. That was how he wanted to be remembered. Not as a hero, not as a legend, just as a man who did his work and loved his sea. But we remember him differently. We remember the ghost fisherman. Let me tell you what this story means. From a simple fisherman with an idea everyone called insane to 6 submarines destroyed and 31,000 lives saved, Alvin Kernan proved that courage needs no uniform, that innovation needs no credentials, and that one person properly positioned and absolutely committed can change the course of history. He never sought recognition. He never wrote a memoir. He never gave interviews. When journalists tracked him down in the 1960s, he told them the same thing he had told Admiral Whitmore decades earlier. "I just paid attention to what the water was telling me. Anyone could have done it." But that's not true. Not anyone could have done it. Not anyone would have faced 3 submarines with only a wooden boat and their own courage. Not anyone would have kept rowing toward the guns when every instinct screamed to run away. Alvin Kernan was not just anyone. He was the man who proved that the extraordinary can come from the ordinary, that the old ways sometimes work better than the new, that David with the right sling and the right stone can still bring down Goliath. The ghost fisherman asked nothing from history except to be left alone. History did not listen. It rarely does when the story is this good. So if you know another tale of someone dismissed, someone underestimated, someone who succeeded against all odds, share it. These stories matter. They remind us that the experts can be wrong, that the systems can fail, and that sometimes the answer is sitting in a small boat, watching the water, waiting for everyone else to catch up. There are 6 German submarines at the bottom of the North Atlantic. Their crews are bones and rust, now silent in the deep. And somewhere above them, forever, the ghost of a wooden dinghy still rows. Not hunting, just watching, making sure the water is safe. That is the democracy of courage. That is the power of one man who refused to believe he couldn't make a difference. And that is why 80 years later we still tell the story of the ghost fisherman. Because the ocean remembers, and so should we.